Hi everyone. Today we are going to learn about Numaflow. What is Numaflow? Numaflow is a Kubernetes native real-time streaming and data processing engine. You can use Numaflow for any kind of stream processing use cases. For example, real-time data analytics, or for real-time inference in the context of ML, or to even create event-driven applications. You can deploy Numaflow on any flavor of Kubernetes that you'd like to. It is lightweight such that you can actually deploy it on an edge device or even in the cloud. Numaflow as a platform comes with a fully featured streaming semantics like MapReduce, joins, cycles, side inputs, and everything. It is language agnostic, making the life of developers easy to create stream processing applications much easier. Now that you have a quick overview of what Numaflow as a platform is, let's try to understand what does it take for you to create a Numaflow pipeline with a simple example. For today's example, I would like to do sentiment analysis on streaming text of data. In order to do so, first you would need a source. Second, you would like to do inference to identify if the text is a positive intent or a negative intent, and then finally store all of your results into a particular sink. To make the life of developers easier, what we do is we provide out-of-the-box sources and sinks. And if you wish to create any kind of custom sources or sinks, you can do so using our Numaflow SDKs. For this example, in order to do inference, I'm going to use a Hugging Face model that is already available. Given that there are already out-of-the-box sources and sinks provided by Numaflow, I'm going to use a HTTP source today and also a log sink. Now that we have a source and a sink available, let's try to see what does it take for us to write that inference piece of code. For the sentiment analysis user-defined function or the inference user-defined function, I'm going to use a Python SDK that is provided by Numaflow in order to do stream processing. So as a developer, all I have to do is I have to write these few lines of code. So let's take a deeper look at what this piece of code is trying to do. First, it's actually trying to read the data from the stream. Second, it does sentiment analysis on that data. And then finally, it's sending out those results into the sink. So as a whole, if it take a look at it, within few lines of code, I don't need to worry about any kind of data movement from my source to user-defined function and from user-defined function to the sink. Instead of that, all I have to worry about is what I want to do with the data that is flowing in. Now that we have understood what does it require for us to create the inference user-defined function, let's take a closer look at the Numaflow pipeline spec in itself. If you take a closer look at this pipeline spec, there are two important things that you have to define as a developer. The first thing is your vertices, and the second is your edges. In our context, or in the example that we have been discussing about, there are three vertices. The first one is our HTTP source, which is inbuilt. The second is the inference vertex. And finally, it's the log vertex that is already available through Numaflow. And finally, you have to define your edges from your source to the inference vertex and from your inference vertex to your log sink. Now that we have seen how to create a user-defined function using a Python SDK and similarly creating a pipeline spec for our sentiment analysis pipeline, let's try to deploy it using our Numaflow UI. So here is our landing page of the Numaflow UI, where you can quickly get a glance of all the namespaces where Numaflow is currently installed, the health of the pipelines across all the namespaces, and also the health of the ISB services. Let's take a deeper look at the default namespace where I currently have one of the pipeline running. So as you enter into this particular namespace, you can also understand the health of all the pipelines that are currently running. I have one pipeline currently running, but if you have more pipelines, you will see the health of all of the pipelines here, the health of the ISB services, and also any kind of Kubernetes events that you'd be interested in looking at for any kind of debugging. So currently, I already have deployed the sentiment analysis pipeline in this particular namespace, but let's go ahead and then try to create another similar pipeline using our create pipeline function here. So by default, we provide you with an example here. But let's try to copy our existing pipeline spec and then see how to create a pipeline using the Numaflow UI. So I have an existing pipeline called as sentiment analysis. So let me quickly change the name of that and then validate if my YAML spec is accurate or not. Looks like my YAML spec is absolutely perfect. So let's go ahead and then click submit. Once you click submit, the pipeline will be created, and you can see that in the status here. So meanwhile, while the pipeline is being created, let's take a closer look at the existing pipeline that is running already. So if you take a closer look at this pipeline, the first one we have discussed in the example is I'm going to use a HTTP source. So that is our first vertex. The second was the user-defined function that we have created, which is the sentiment inference. And lastly, it is the log sink where we are actually writing all of our results to. Let's try to send some request to our HTTP source here so that we can get the inference results in the log sync. So I'm going to send a few requests using Postman. So one of the first requests that I want to send is saying that Kubernetes is the ultimate wingman, always there to support you. Let's send this request. This is like kind of a positive intent. Let's send two of them. And let's also send few negative texts as well. So the example that I've chosen is writing documentation is like trying to explain quantum physics to a toddler. So let's try to send two of these requests too. Let's try to take a look at these results in the Numaflow UI. So these results should be available in the log sync. So let's take a quick look at the examples. So here are the 4 examples that we have sent. The first one was the Kubernetes is the ultimate wingman. You could see the sentiment was positive. Similarly, this was the second request. And after that, we have sent 2 more negative sentiments. So you could see that these are the negative sentiments here. So as a whole, you could see that with the click of a request, you could see that entire pipeline was doing the inference on the text that was flowing in seamlessly, and you could see the results in the log sync here. Just to summarize what we have discussed so far, it's a very simple pipeline where you have reading data from the HTTP source, doing the inference on that, and writing the results to a log sync. And also we have seen how you can actually use Numaflow UI to create a pipeline spec and deploy the pipeline from here itself. And also if you wish to manage your pipelines, you can do so from the UI too. For example, if you want to pause the pipeline, you can do that. Or if you want to edit the spec of that particular pipeline, you can do it from here. And if you want to delete the pipeline, you can do that. So to quickly summarize what we have learned today, we have learned about what Numaflow is, how to create a simple pipeline using the Numaflow UI. Here we created a sentiment analysis pipeline, and also manage these pipelines using the Numaflow UI. Now that we have a high-level understanding of what all the components are, let's take a quick look at our user guide. So here are a few simple steps that you can actually follow to get started with Numaflow. Within very few steps, you can deploy Numaflow on any of the Kubernetes clusters that you are interested in. And also, you can also learn about various concepts related to the pipelines, the vertices, the interstep buffers, and all the configurations that you would like to do using our user guide. I hope you are excited to get started with Numaflow.